happy with that, my baby. What's going on, guys? It's Rich. I'm back with another episode of Behind the Counter 2.0. It's been about a month. This is the fourth episode of this new endeavor, which was an old endeavor, but it's a new endeavor now because I'm doing it now in 2021. Pretty cool stuff. A lot of great feedback. Again, I say it every week. Can't thank you guys enough. So let's jump right into it. Wanda Vision this week. Spoiler alert, I know this is dropping the Saturday after the newest episode comes out, but if you haven't seen it yet, you may want to kind of plug your ears, take your headphones off, mute me for a little bit while I talk about it. But big reveal in this week's episode, Agatha Harkness, huh? Pretty interesting. We kind of saw it coming. I feel like the writing was on the wall, so to speak, as far as this character showing up. I think there's going to be more reveals later on. Catherine Hahn has done an amazing job on this series, and this episode I feel like was more akin to your Modern Family, The Office, Arrested Development style of mockumentary, documentary filmmaking. An interesting conversation I had with my wife while watching this is it seems like the Marvel properties are not only timeless, but it seems like this machine is not going to stop anytime soon, which I'm cool with. The reason why I'm bringing that up is because it leaves room for storytelling that's a little outside the box in the future. Like I said, this stuff is probably not going to stop anytime soon. We may not even see the end of the Marvel franchise in our lifetimes, which is nuts to think about. But if you think about a movie like Logan was heralded as kind of like an indie take on a superhero movie. Excellent flick. But I feel like that style of storytelling is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to the Marvel movies, because once you get firmly ensconced in the lore, the different ideas, the different way to approach these characters, you're going to get a lot more different stories and a lot of varied stories, which are going to kind of be off the beaten path. You know, it doesn't have to be all punch, Captain America speech. Thor says something funny. Here's the formula, and that's it. You know, we can have a lot more cohesive, fun, stylish, artistic, etc. type stories coming out from Marvel in the future. Who saw that Mortal Kombat trailer? Pretty cool. I'm a simpleton when it comes to this stuff. As long as Scorpion says, get over here, and you see Sub-Zero, I'm happy with it. The movie looks good. I can't wait for it to come out. It's coming out in April 2021. I wonder if there's a couple of guys who could talk about it, though, in a podcast format. Maybe two guys who've talked about a Mortal Kombat movie in the past. I don't know. We'll see about that, huh, Alex? Anyway, here are my picks of the week before we jump into our interview today. Comics have been an embarrassment of riches as far as creators go, writers, artists, inkers, letterers, colorers in the last few years. I don't know where this groundswell came from, but it's here, and I'm here for it, and I'm glad about it. This week, I think my pick of the week is Batman Catwoman number 3 from Tom King and Clayman. Really digging this series. You really have to pay attention to this one, not just because it's on the shelf and you want to buy a new comic book, but I think you really have to actually pay attention to the paneling, the writing, and all that stuff. The story kind of goes back and forth between present-day Batman-Catwoman relationship and the future of this world. It's a Black Label book, so it's almost like a Vertigo version of a superhero story, kind of like what Marvel did with Marvel Knights a few years ago, except a little more adult. So that being said, the story takes place in the present day. You have the relationship between Batman and Catwoman, and then a future relationship as well, in this issue specifically, between Catwoman and Huntress. Another solid issue, really fun. There's also the toying around with the Phantasm from Batman Mask of the Phantasm. You may remember that character from that animated movie. Always one of my favorites. Tom King, the dude can do no wrong for me as far as comic book writing goes. Very solid, very solid. I talk about his books all the time. Immortal Hulk Flatline from Declan Shalvey. Another interesting book this week. It made it to the top of my pile because I'm a sucker for the Immortal Hulk stuff, and I think Declan's take on it fits right into the universe. This is a self-contained story that takes place in the Immortal Hulk continuity, and this one is it's a nice and quick kind of giving you a key, not a tell-all, but it's a nice and quick story that gets wrapped up in one issue. It has to do with the gamma side effects, gamma radiation, which is a big plot point in the Immortal Hulk story, where all the gamma infused folks kind of come out of the woodwork and they all have something linked together. If you have not checked out Immortal Hulk, I suggest you picking up the trades. Try to get the single issues. They're a very hot commodity right now, but you won't be disappointed. This is my favorite Hulk stuff since Planet Hulk that came out, Jesus, many moons ago. Thor number 12. Another great issue from Donny Cates, Nick Klein, and Matt Wilson. It continues the story about how Don Blake, Thor's alter human ego that Odin created, was trapped in this universe of Odin's making and realized he was trapped there while Thor was doing Thor stuff. Now, Thor hasn't transformed into Donald Blake in several years, and you kind of see that evident in the story, where the entity known as Donald Blake has gone bananas, has trapped Thor in the world he was trapped in, and now is wreaking havoc on the Marvel Universe. And he's going after the Thor associates, I suppose. And this issue is a nice confrontation between him and Jane Foster, who is now Valkyrie. Really good stuff. Can't wait to see where this is going. Donny Cates, I feel like he didn't have a hard time following Jason Aaron, but that is not an act I want to follow. And Donny Cates is doing such a bang up job with the series so far. 12 issues in, guys. Another pick of the week. I'm going to go for the nostalgia one this week. This is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Last Ronin number 2. Hot book. This is one of the hottest books on the shelf. Number 1, sold out immediately. People were going crazy looking for it. I ended up picking mine up on eBay the day of release for about $15, I think, with free shipping, which is, still double the price of the book. But listen, hot book. Issue number 2 came out. And the reason why it's hot, I must interrupt myself, is because this is the first collaboration between Eastman and Laird in, 75 years pretty much, right? We left off Michelangelo as the last Ronin. It's the future of the Turtles universe. Everybody's dead. Sucks. Michelangelo is the last man standing, and he is indeed the last Ronin. Issue number 1 was fun. Issue 2, I believe, was a little bit late. It came out this week, but also really fun book. You kind of got to dive more into turtle lore. If we're in the same age group, I'm about to hit 40 this year. That big 40. 40 is the new 20, but that's okay. I'll always be America's cutest teenager. When I was a kid, I loved Ninja Turtles. And as an adult, my love for Ninja Turtles has always been there, but this book kind of re-cemented why I love these characters so much. And if it's coming from the guys who created them originally, I'm all for it. All right, guys, without further ado, let's talk a little bit about my guest this week, Ethan Young, comic book artist, illustrator, cartoonist, amazing drawer, if that's what you want to call it. Cool dude. I've known Ethan for a few years now, and he is one of the nicest guys on the planet, and he is a fantastic artist. His new book, The Dragon Path, is coming out this year, May 18th, 2021, and he's here to talk about his book. We're here to talk about comics, and we're going to talk about sandwiches. Hit it. All right, guys, our guest for today is Ethan Young. The Dragon Path is coming out May 18th. I think you guys should check it out. Ethan, what's going on?
Doing good, Rich. How are you?
I'm all right, man. I'm all right. We're both East Coast guys. We both got slammed by snow.
Yeah.
How's that treating you?
It's not bad. It's a little icy, but it's good.
Cheers, sir. Good seeing you. We go back. We go back a couple of years, right?
Yeah, I think I first met you around 2015. That's when Nanjing the Burning City first came out.
Yeah.
And that was at New York Comic Con. And I think at that time, it was my first really big release. And I was just meeting a lot of different people all at once who all of a sudden knew who I was. And before that, it was like, mostly obscurity and just kind of being like, oh, you worked on that. And so that was really nice. And yeah, you're one of the nicer guys I met. So that's why I guess we've been friends for a while now.
Yeah, I appreciate the sentiment. I remember that con very specifically because you and I ended up hanging out a good chunk of that weekend because you were around the Dark Horse booth promoting Nanjing and also just hanging out with everybody.
Yeah, I think it was just I guess socially I am a little bit awkward and stuff, so I tend to like hang around a little bit too much. And I think part of me is like, yeah, no one probably wants me around that much. But you and I bonded, so that's good. I think we both love toys,
Oh my god,
obviously.
yeah.
So that's good.
Clearly. So how'd you get your start, man? Like you've been at this for quite some time, and I I always enjoyed your work because it's all you.
Mm.
Like how did you get your start, and then how did you kind of turn that into like a one man operation basically?
Um, well, I think a lot of it is just being really, really stubborn. And so, like around 2002, I had dropped out of SVA,
Mhm.
and once again, it was partly out of being stubborn and partly out of being yeah, I just don't think that the institution of art school is really right for me. Like I don't for a long time in my younger years, I try to like encourage people, oh, you don't need art school, you don't need art school. But I've kind of done a little bit of a 180 on that and kind of eased down. I think what I would tell people is that it's not for everyone. And the
Mhm.
structure of SVA just wasn't really for me at that time. I think I needed a lot of time to just kind of learn on my own because I was at LaGuardia for 4 years, which if anyone from the city or even outside of the city knows, it's like a pretty top tier high school for art. And so like I was already kind of like doing all those projects. And I was like, ah man, I'm ready. I'm ready to be a comic book artist. I really wasn't at that time, but I thought
Mhm.
I was freaking ready. So so at that time, Jim Lee had just done Just Imagine Stan Lee creating Wonder Woman.
Mhm.
And he was promoting the book and he was at a big Apple con. And it was really rare for Jim Lee at that time to do shows on the East Coast, I believe. And so I got my portfolio together, got there. I was so full of myself. I was like, man, I'm going to get a fucking job right this day. Uh, I was first in line to see him. He complimented my art and just told me to keep going at it. I went outside on the church steps and cried because it was such a blow to my ego at that time. And yeah, and then I started like rescuing animals with my ex-girlfriend at the time, and and then from all that work with animal rescue, I turned that into my first self-published comic, Tales. um I did some like early internet research on how to self-publish your comic because I was like, you know what, I want to write it, I want to draw it, I got a story I have to tell. I don't want to deal with an editor because once again, you're incredibly stubborn when you're 20 and 21.
Mhm.
So I did that, and then in '05, that's when I first released it, and then and then I accrued a little bit of debt from that, and but luckily it was noticed by CB Sabelski, who at the time was like a talent. Um, Actually, I don't know if he was actually the talent scout for Marvel at the time, but he did have a couple of stuff coming out from Image, and so he tapped me to just do a couple of short stories for Image, and then there was the 2 volumes of Wonderlost that I did for Image, which is CB's own semi-autobiographical like exploits from
Mhm.
high school. And then there was the Tori Amos book from Image that ended up winning the Eisner. And that for a long time, that was probably the biggest thing I had published within mainstream comics.
Mhm.
And even within the freelance stuff that I was doing, you bring up the name Tori Amos, and all of a sudden that brings a lot of clout with you. So
Right,
that
right.
job paid for itself.
Did you get to meet Tori Amos and work with her directly?
No, no, I think a lot of so I've met some Tori Amos fans who've asked that as well.
Uh-huh.
I think she might have name checked my story. I'm not 100% sure,
Mhm.
but yeah, at the time, it was an honor. It still remains an honor. It was a good book, and I enjoyed working on it. And then, yeah, mainly did freelance stuff for a long time until I ended up doing a series with my buddy Todd, who you might have met in New York Comic Con. I was always around his table, a
Yes,
Piggy
yeah.
Scale. Yeah, based on the dog that he rescued, that he named Piggy. We always have to
Mhm.
explain that to people. I was
Mhm.
like, we have to name this comic something else. But most people who stopped by the table to pet the dog were very patient and heard the story. He was a rescue dog, became a
Mhm.
therapy dog, helped a lot of kids. So did that. And then yeah, around that time, I was like, you know what? I've been working on. Sorry, take a sip of beer.
No, go for it. I'm
Mm.
gonna join you.
I was I had wanted to work. I had wanted to do a book about the Nanjing massacre for a very, very long time in my
Hmm.
20s. I read up on it, and it was this huge flashpoint for not just Chinese history, but World War II history. And I was like, you know what? I feel like this is something I should tap into. And thankfully, I didn't do it in my 20s because I was not emotionally mature enough and not
Hmm.
sensitive enough to the kind of material to approach it in like an artistic fashion that wasn't exploitative.
Hmm.
And then luckily in my 30s, I had kind of become a little bit more seasoned and a little bit more tempered in how I approach comics and comics making. And
Hmm.
so, yeah, I put together, I think the first 60 pages. I really committed myself to teach myself how to draw faster. Um, because I grew up admiring guys like Art Adams and Jim Lee and Joe
Hmm.
Madureira, and those guys are so detail oriented. And when you grow up,
Right.
you're like, oh, you want to copy these people, but that's not always conducive um, to like accomplishing a wide array of things just because you shouldn't really spend 3 days on each page. um so with Nanjing, when I first started creating the pitch, I kind of taught myself to draw faster. I was just like, I'm gonna finish a page a day, let's see how it goes. Reached out to a friend who knew an editor at Dark Horse, and then yeah, that's how it turned out. It turned out well, and my career has had some ups and downs since then, but
Mhm.
mostly it's been good now.
Yeah, mostly it's ups. Um,
Yeah, hopefully. Yeah.
now I've kind of like a process question for you. Generally, like what size are you working with when you're creating like your own stuff, or just in general? Like what's your preference? Because when Nanjing came out, I think it was not like a pocket sized style, but it was a condensed graphic novel, right?
Right.
So like what are you working with, like as far as like the actual physical drawing?
The actual physical drawing is still 11 by 17.
Okay.
Because I tend to hand letter myself, I kind of need a bigger canvas for that.
Hmm.
And yeah, 11 by 17 also just allows me to fit in the most detail for the most part because I'm still pretty detail oriented
Hmm.
with my work. Um, yeah, nothing nothing wacky or out of the norm when it comes to how I work. I've a
Hmm.
pretty standard and pretty boring process of working.
And how much would you say you can get done in a day, like if you commit yourself? Because I always find that fascinating, like depending on who the artist is, and your stuff, I mentioned this to you a couple of weeks ago. Your stuff is getting way more detailed now. I think that's like the progression, and it's nice to see that, because you're getting better and better. Not to say that you were terrible, you were always a very excellent artist, but you're getting better.
Oh, that's very sweet of you to say.
I hope that check is in the mail.
Yeah, yeah. Um, if if I didn't have to take care of my son for most of the day,
Mhm.
when he gets home from school, I would probably be able to get like 2 pages done in terms of like penciling and inking.
Mhm.
But even then, I might be rushing it a little bit. It depends how much detail and if there is a big establishment shot I have to tackle.
Mhm.
That's one of the things that I learned while doing Nanjing was just like not every panel has to be this masterpiece. Like you should just um much like Wally Wood when he had the what was it 21 panels that always work.
Mhm.
Like I always say, Stephen King said, always refine. You have to refine the tools in your toolbox for your craft, and I think the way that applies to doing comic book work and sequential work is, I mean, it doesn't have to be 21 panels that always work, but you just have
Mhm.
to remember, like each each comic book does not actually consist of hundreds of different panels. They're the same 10 to 20 panels. They're just rearranged differently. And
Mhm.
there's a variety in the angles a little bit so that it feels different. But like for the most part, like if I open a John Romita Jr. comic or a Jim Lee comic, people have been doing it for like 30 years. It's like
Mhm.
I know what to expect and what it's going to look like, what the foreground's going to look like, what the shots are going to basically look like. And yeah, I taught myself that. It's like, you know what? This page has a big establishment shot. I gotta allocate just a little bit more time to that. Some of the talking head panels, maybe not as much. It still has to look good, obviously. It still has to look professional,
Right.
but you don't have to like just stress over the smaller panels as much.
Mhm. Who are, as far as as far as because I find your work fascinating too, because like I said, it's completely you. It's all you. In that regard, do you have any kind of influences that you look towards like while you're working or for inspiration? Like other artists?
Oh, you mean like all time or just recently?
Both.
Well, all time, obviously, I think it would be like given my age range too, it would be
Mhm.
Art Adams and Jim Lee.
Okay.
Like those two just I love them so much growing up, and I still love them today. And looking back, I really should have bought more of their art when it was affordable because now
Oh my
it's so
god.
unaffordable.
Oh, it's ridiculous, unaffordable. Like when you told that story before about how you met Jim Lee and then you immediately started crying, I was like, oh, because you met Jim Lee. But yeah, like that stuff. I think we're both in the same age group, so it's like if you grew up with comics in the '90s, Jim Lee will always have that insane place in your heart. You know?
Yeah, and so nowadays, there's a lot of the masters like Otomo, Mobius,
Mhm.
Miyazaki that I think a lot of people I've noticed that like cartoonists my age or a little bit older. I saw Blueberry, Mobius's Blueberry when I was younger,
Mhm.
but I really didn't know how to process that kind of art just because it was so different than everything that I'd been exposed to at the time.
Right.
Like I could tell that it was empirically and objectively well done,
Mhm.
but I couldn't really tell like, oh, this is why his line work is actually better than most people's line work, or this is why his compositions are actually so incredible. Because look at it, there's like
Mhm.
10 fucking horses on there. Like you know how fucking hard it is to draw a horse, things
Yeah.
like that. Um, those are just some kind of like unapproachable type of heroes. But like in terms of
Mhm.
like colleagues and just people who I've really admired over the last 10, 15 years.
Mhm.
Like I love Chris Samney's stuff.
Mhm.
I think he's amazing. And one of your guests, Adam Gorham, I think he's pretty fantastic. Um, and Jillian Tamaki, she's pretty great.
Okay.
Really wonderful stuff. And yeah, lots of people. I
It's a
think
it's a lot now. I mean,
yeah,
like,
it's a lot.
like there's a. I mean, like that's a good thing. You know, it's almost like I think comics at this point are going through kind of an embarrassment of riches
Yeah.
where there's so many good writers and artists out there. And you mentioned Miyazaki, and you can definitely see a little bit of that influence in your work. You know, and I want to ask you, have you ever thought about taking any of the stuff you're working on, Nanjing maybe, or maybe Dragon Path, and going like full blown animation with it?
Yeah, I mean, I would love to if there was money for me to do it. I think,
Mhm.
I had worked very briefly in Azure, and then I did a little bit of work on Axe Cop season two.
I'm gonna
And
stop you. I'm gonna
oh,
stop you right there. Your video kind of fizzled out real quick,
okay,
so let's take it from just if you would like your stuff to be translated into animation.
yeah, if I was able to get money for it, I do have I do have a film and TV agent. If she could get me those kind of good deals, I would definitely take it. I had worked briefly in animation on a couple of shows for FXX, Major Lazer, and season two of Axe Cop, just a little
Mhm.
bit. But for the most part, I think if the opportunities came and presented themselves, like, hey, would you like to adapt this? I would never turn down the money. I learned that now. Like, oh, never turn down the money. Never turn down the money.
Yeah, I think that also comes with age too. You know, it's
Yeah,
not to say like like obviously you have your ideals, like obviously you have your ideals and all that stuff, but you know what, like I think the older you get, the more you're like, yeah, you know what, like please back up the dump truck full of money, and you
yeah,
can you can take my stuff and make it like several award-winning animated features. you know
yeah.
um so going forward, you have the Dragon Path is coming out May 18th. Can you talk to us like a little bit or a lot of bit about the book, what the story is, the inspiration, etc., like what pushed you in this direction?
Okay, well, so if I can get a little personal, I can get personal, right? I
Oh
guess.
yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so after
Mhm.
Nanjing, I had a couple of comic series comic projects just didn't really do well,
Mhm.
and it wasn't really anyone's fault except, I guess, mine. Like
Mhm.
I probably should have, um, I probably should have thought about the projects a little bit more extensively before jumping into them. I Bridget Lee, the sci-fi series I tried out at Dark Horse, like looking back, I feel like I probably should have put a little bit more thought into the designs, or probably done a little bit better here or there. Like looking back, I'm just like, I think I could have done better. I'm pretty hard on myself in that sense. So with the Dragon Path, I had gotten a new agent, and I basically said to him and to myself, like, I want to create something, like a 10-year-old me or a 13-year-old me would love. Like, oh, excuse me, the beer went down the wrong way before.
Oh no.
And I no longer I don't want to create something just because, like, oh, I think this is what's trending and I think this is what could be popular. Like, I want to create something that would just blow my fucking mind when I was like 13, the way Bone did. Like, that was another big influence that I forgot to mention. Like, Jeff Smith's Bone really made me want to write comics and try that out as well. And like, I just want to create something that's really immersive for like a young reader, and also kind of like, you know, and the characters in the Dragon Path are very noticeably Asian, and I want to just kind of create like a steampunk Asian world that has, you know, representation for that. And yeah, and when I set out to actually draw it, like sit down and draw it, I think I mentioned this to you last year before the pandemic. We were sitting down for beer. I was like, I'm gonna draw this comic, this graphic novel, like it's the last fucking thing I ever draw in my life, and I just poured my heart and soul into it. And it's if no one reads it, it's gonna be a real bummer. I was just gonna say that.
Well, it's looking good because you do post your process and you do post your pages on occasion. Can you give us like a bit of if you could summarize it in, let's say, 2 or 3 sentences, what would you say about the Dragon Path?
Okay. It's a story about a young prince and his family, and they're heading back to kind of this what they call the Old Land, which is a land of their heritage and a place where it's kind of like fable to them. But then to get there, they're crossing the Dragon Path, which is where their sworn enemies are. And then as the prince gets separated, he meets a giant monster, or who he is told is a monster, who guards the Old Land. And then from there, the young prince has to basically save the day. So that was
So
more than that was more than 2 or 3 sentences.
that's
Sorry.
fine. That's fine. So it's so this is a self-contained graphic novel. It's just one large book.
It is. It is. With
Okay.
I mean, some people who have read it, who have got an early look at it, have already kind of asked if there'll be a sequel to it. I don't know. I hope it does well. Yeah, but it is self-contained. It's 200 pages, so it's definitely the longest book I've done in terms of like just drawing it and coloring it myself.
And how do you do the coloring also? Like, what's your process with that? Because like you said, you're drawing on 11 by 17 pencils and inks, right? And what's the process for the coloring after that? I'm fascinated by the coloring process too.
Oh, I mean, I'm a pretty just standard colorist in terms of like both the quality and the process. Just I get the flats sent back to me from a great flatter named Fernando, and I have a very very simple process in terms of like, I like to keep it simple just because the line art tends to be a little bit detailed, and so I don't want the coloring to kind of make the line art look too muddy, or just too um I don't know what's the word I'm looking for. I want to make sure all the lines are clear first. So
Okay.
I tend to just kind of use less shading, but more kind of depth building with the color, like, and make sure that like the levels are all really good. Like, you can always see immediately when you look at the page, where's the foreground, where's the middle ground, and where's the background, so that nothing like just blends together into like, I don't know, like sometimes I'm afraid that my coloring could come across as too muddled, but I'm hoping with this book it doesn't.
Okay. Okay. I'm looking forward to the book. Do you miss the convention scene at all?
I mean, I don't really do that many, but
Mm-hmm.
the ones I did do, I was very fond of going there just because, I mean, that's the nice thing about conventions and doing panels and stuff. It's a nice break from the daily life of being a
Mm-hmm.
creator, which is pretty lonely. So for the most part, it's nice to kind of go out and have people actually see people appreciate your work in person. It's actually pretty
Mm-hmm.
wonderful. So yeah, I miss that, and but I don't miss I don't miss walking to the Javits Center from the A train. I don't miss that. I don't miss I don't miss how on Sunday it feels like a fire hazard. I'll say that.
Oh my God, yeah. I hopefully when the world opens up again, all the convention centers kind of wise up to their to their capacity limitations, I guess we could call it, you know?
Yeah, it's I don't know, especially on Sundays at New York Comic Con. I always because I have a kid, I always felt so bad for some of like the toddlers that were brought there because I think they get in for free on Sunday, right?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to shit on Repop or anything, but like, I it's just there are times I'm just kind of like,
Yeah.
oh my god, those poor fucking kids.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I hear you. I always feel the same way because it's like I think that's when you look at the physical grand scheme of things, like kids at conventions are like extra tiny for some reason, and you're
Yeah,
always so worried that they're gonna get trampled by like a super fan or like somebody carrying like an oversized bag full of whatever they bought, you know?
yeah. I think when you grow up in New York City, you tend to you're used to crowds to a certain degree, but I
Yes,
think
absolutely.
being in a crowd that dense on a convention floor, it's gotta fuck up your like sensory just a little bit. It's just you can't go anywhere, you
Mhm.
feel trapped. Like even as a full grown adult, and it's just kind of like I just want to go 10 feet that way, and it's gonna take me 15 minutes.
It's pretty nuts when you think about it that way because that's how it usually is. I got a quick story about a convention. I have a buddy who I tease about this story a lot because it was one of the funniest things I've ever seen in my life. I met him outside. I was working at the convention. This is maybe like 7 or 8 years ago. Excuse me. I met him outside. I'm like, "You're ready to go to the show floor?" Absolutely, let's do it. I bring him inside the convention. We took maybe 20 feet, like we walked 20 feet onto the show floor. Somebody sneezed on him, and then he immediately just made a loop, went outside, hailed a cab, and got in and left. That was it. And as he's walking, he's like, "I'm done for the day. I'll see you guys later. Goodbye. No, thank you." And he came all the way into the city for a one mini loop, literally like a almost like a cartoon. Put his hand out. Cab came, took him home. Like 45 minutes later, I get a text saying like, "Hey, I'm home. Thanks, but not for me." Which is what
Oh, that
happens.
was pretty funny.
Like unfortunately, we do all have those Comic Con stories where you're kind of stuck in like you're stuck in the middle of all this stuff going on around you.
Yeah, I do like to going to smaller. I kind of miss some of the
Mm.
smaller local shows that I used to have up here in Ithaca.
Mm.
They're very they're very intimate and they're very they're great for interacting with people that normally don't get to go to big shows.
Right.
So that's also pretty great. So yeah, when the world opens up again, I am looking forward to finally going out to like some panels and promoting my book. Not least of which because I also need the book to do well. So and I
Right.
want the book to do well. So
Yeah, you kind of have to be the spokesperson, especially if it's all you. You kind of have to be the spokesperson for like all your work.
yeah, I mean that's like the funny thing, especially like when you're on comics Twitter and stuff, you kind of see that like
Mm.
even when you have like a bigger publisher backing you and you have agents and you have the support network that's necessary to be successful in this industry, you still really do have to be your own pitch person, and you gotta be on all the time. And I think that's kind of like the eternal struggle for like introverted cartoonists and creators is just kind of like how to balance that out between being a pitch person versus
Mhm.
just being the quiet, dedicated creator.
Yeah, you kind of almost have to create like another persona for yourself, right?
Yeah, I mean, when I first started doing freelancing, when I started my freelance business back in '07, '08,
Mhm.
I had to do like the bullshit like fake handshake and like
Mhm.
I went into like a couple of like I worked with a couple of startups, like video game startups and stuff, and every person that entered into a meeting had to tell me like their title at the company, and I'm like, there's like 12 people here. I don't give a shit. Like whatever. You give me the head of
Yeah.
you give me the head of snacks. I don't give a fuck. Like I'm just here to be the. They brought this was like a video game company. That just they brought in a comic book artist to do the storyboards
Right.
for
Right.
an RPG they were pitching, and it's just there was like, even for this small startup in
Mhm.
Tribeca, there was so many fucking egos in this one tiny room. It's amazing.
Listen, give a title to somebody and they will take it as far as it could go, you know? Like,
Yeah,
now it's
let me
funny.
intimidate this comic artist coming in here as a third party.
Did you list your credentials too when it was time for you to introduce yourself?
Well, at the time, I won an independent publishers book award for Tales.
Okay.
I should have listed that. That would have been that would have been funny.
Winner of the so and so award myself, you know? Yeah, like stuff like that's kind of interesting, especially when you kind of when you meet when the world of extreme creativity and that corporate world meet. I think within the last 5 years, that is certainly something that creators have to think about,
Hmm.
you know, especially like you never know who's reading or who's watching. And hopefully, let's say somebody reads The Dragon Path and you get a call from Netflix, you know, so you're going to have to go into that room and listen to every single person in that room tell you what they do. And it doesn't matter if they're the snack guy or not, you know,
Yeah,
but like, I hope that happens, you know?
I do. I do. I hope so too. And I mean, that's why I think that's like the next big step too for like I think a lot of younger cartoonists now. There's so many great ones coming out now, and
Mhm.
but I do see a trend, and I think it's going to continue where I think younger cartoonists aren't going to be as interested in going the path alone. I think they're going to want agents, and
Okay.
that is a good thing in the long run because you know your agent hopefully is supposed to protect you from more predatory stuff that can happen in this industry.
Mhm.
So that's going to be a good thing.
Well, that's a positive. Like, when did you kind of get wise to the notion of having an agent and saying, I definitely need this?
Some of my colleagues were kind of urging me to get an agent first, and I tried to get one. And at the
Mhm.
time, it's just, when your biggest thing is a Tori Amos book that you did in 2008,
Mhm.
2009, and it's 2013 already. It's, agents, unfortunately, they have to prioritize, and that doesn't might not always seem like a priority to them. So, but after Nanjing and after it got the award, the Reuben Award, and after it got nominated for an Eisner and all that other stuff, all of a sudden that does open a few more doors for you. And I think it was just the idea at the time. I think I heard it from agent and other colleagues that like, what, your career could be a little bit different. It could
Mhm.
go in this direction, it could go in that direction. That's all depending on you. But having an agent facilitate those things is a wise thing to kind of take on because they like once again they will protect you from more predatory things. They will look through even standard contracts that publishers give out and be like, what, this is not because the publisher is malicious, but they put in these kinds of rights for them, and then your agent is supposed to just go no, 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 and no. The creator is going to keep those rights, and they're not doing it maliciously. That, oh, let
Right.
me like pull the rug from under you. It's just more like, hey, this is standard, and then the agent goes, no, like, here's what we want.
Right. Which is smart, you know, and I kind of feel like I like to say that the age of the bitter creator is kind of coming to a close. And I think it's because of things like that, you know, where you need all your stuff protected. You need to come out on top in a way, you know, but also benefit whoever you're working for. And I think that's a more modern approach as opposed to like, even like 20 years ago where, you didn't even know if you were getting like dicked out of something.
Yeah, I'm still bitter. I mean, not bitter, bitter, but there's still plenty of time I can still become super bitter.
I don't think
But
that could
yeah,
ever happen.
anything could happen. I mean, we know some bitter cartoonists, slightly
Yes.
older than. Yeah, that's always a shame. And I mean, one of the things I also learned over the past 5 years, and it's been really beneficial to me, is stop treating your art as so precious. Because
Mhm.
I think that's one of the things that like artists of my generation kind of grew up with, was just like, I create it,
Mhm.
I will dictate what happens with it afterwards,
Mhm.
and no one can change it, because if you change it, that loses its integrity.
Mhm.
Like at the time, it was like, I don't want to use any digital on my art. It has to be all traditional. It's all got to be done this way, that way. Part of
Yeah.
it's OCD as well. But over the past 5 years, I was like, you know what? It's actually easier if I just make these revisions digitally. No one's really gonna care at the end of the
Mhm.
day. Like I care, maybe a couple of art snobs will care.
Right.
Like, hey, instead of going through the laborious process of changing this traditionally,
Yeah.
rescanning it, and then recoloring it, I just used Photoshop.
Mhm.
And no one can really tell the difference except people who are like self-proclaimed and self-appointed purveyors of good taste, I guess.
Like, yeah, I guess so. I think like those the folks who do that for comic books, like I kind of feel like there's also some like something wrong upstairs to the point where
A little
like
bit.
like if you're gonna poo poo something that you like, and you gave a good example, if you're gonna poo poo something that has a little bit of Photoshop work in there, as opposed to like completely all like just all natural without any digital stuff, then there's something like not quite right, like I like, and you know what? You mentioned comic book Twitter before. I feel like that's, sometimes you go on comic book Twitter and you're like, yeah, this is great, great community. And then sometimes you go on there and you're like, oh boy, like I don't want to talk to any of these people.
Yeah, no, I don't want to stir up too much shit
I
because
know,
I
I
don't
know,
want
I
people
know.
to watch this.
Exactly.
But yeah, it's one of those things where like sometimes even on comics Twitter, it's like it's not that I disagree with people about
Mm,
what it is that might be the issue that day. It's just more like, guys, folks, like this is a small community, and like at the end of the day, it's like um the thing we are arguing about probably applies is probably only really important to like several hundred people, but people take it
right.
really seriously, and it's like
Yeah.
you either have to have this opinion or that opinion right
Mm,
away, and everything's got to be a hot take right away. It's like, you know what, I'm gonna take some time to think about it. My opinion might not align with either one of them right now, and this is
mm,
not to say like when the issue of abuse comes up in the industry, that's different. That's different.
100%.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you got to take a hard line. But if
Right.
it's just kind of like, hey, oh, perfect example, the Snyder Cut trailer.
Okay.
Snyder
Sure.
stuff is not for me, but at the same time, it's like, so long as you're not a fan that's being abusive to other people,
Mm,
you're more than entitled to enjoy this incredibly dark take on Batman, and
right.
incredibly dark take on Superman. It's not for me, but I've seen people who are so strident in their fandom of Superman, which is um, with that kind of enthusiasm can be charming at times, but other times it's like, I think you're just shitting on Snyder fans because it's fun for you.
Right. 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 Right.
And it's like, so long as they're not being abusive trolls, they're
Mm.
entitled to enjoy something that I personally don't really like. That's all.
Yeah. No, 100%, 100%. But I think you're a reasonable, rational person, and you're also in the industry, So I think there's like that separation of like church and state in a weird way,
Yeah.
where like exactly how hard it is to make something, and to present it, and then not only make something and present it, but kind of hope that people enjoy it. So like I think you have that rationality that comes with that. The Snyder stuff is very interesting. Me personally, like it's a give or take for me. It's not gonna make or break like my world, which it seems like a
Right.
lot of these people kind of hinge on it. Like I know my wife's not gonna want to watch it with me. So like I'm
Yeah.
gonna, what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna get some snacks. I'm gonna probably do a video chat with my brother while we watch it together. And that's it. And you know what? Like he's gonna say, cool, that was a lot of fun. I gotta take the kid somewhere, and I'm gonna go, great. And that's it. But I think like the be all end all stuff is very fascinating in the times we live in, especially during the pandemic.
Yeah, I think it's important, I think, in fandom in general, but
Mhm.
The Snyder Cut stuff is kind of, and also the Scorsese versus Marvel stuff has also kind of brought this to the forefront. Is
Yeah.
guys, please stop attaching your self-esteem to this stuff.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
just because someone tells you that Captain America Winter Soldier is not real cinema doesn't mean that all of a sudden you're not allowed to watch it. You can still watch it.
Right.
You can still watch it. And on that note, no offense, nerd, but you don't actually know more about movies than Martin Scorsese. Like that's kind of what I
Right.
want to say too.
Right. I think a lot of times with these discussions, it's kind of like rationale, like the rational thinking goes out the window.
Right.
Like if you take a step back and like I feel like I'll take I'll take the Joker with the Joaquin Phoenix Joker movie, right? And a buddy of mine had the perfect review for it. If you've never seen a Martin Scorsese movie, you're gonna love this movie.
Okay.
And I'm like, that's, you know what? That's all I need to hear. That's perfect, because it's like, I think you kind of cross tastes between comic books and cinema. There's a lot of crossover. And especially in the last 20 years, where you get these big budget, like very well made superhero movies.
Mhm.
When we were kids, we didn't have that.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like a pleasure, me personally, and I'm confident that you'd probably think the same way, where it's a pleasure to watch these, but it's not going to be the be all end all of your existence.
Yeah, like my favorite movie of all time, this might surprise people, is David
Mm.
Fincher's Zodiac. Like I
Good
love
movie.
that movie. Like,
Yeah.
um, I mean, I could quote that movie, which I won't. I'm not gonna go.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, because I mean, the main character is a cartoonist, and
Mhm.
I think for a lot of people, like true crime is incredibly fascinating
Yeah.
because you don't have to do the real detective work, which is just long and boring. You can
Mhm.
just have all the clues presented to you, and then you can project yourself onto it and play a sleuth yourself.
Oh,
I
sure.
think that's what's really alluring about true crime, just as a genre across
Mhm.
all platforms. But it's so meticulously well made. And there's a lot of stories coming out about David Fincher being a jerk on set too,
Mhm.
which is causes that kind of cognitive dissonance thing, like a lot of the
Yeah.
Joss Whedon stuff lately, which is just kind of like how much can you separate art from artists, et cetera,
Mhm.
which
Absolutely.
this is
Yeah.
probably not the platform to get into that right now. But yeah, it's one of those things where it's like, guys, like I love Infinity War. I've seen Infinity War 50
Mhm.
times. It's the perfect movie to watch while you're working or drawing. And
Absolutely.
yeah, and I love Goodfellas. And I really don't need Scorsese to validate what it is I like to
Mhm.
watch. I've seen
Yeah.
Goodfellas 30 times. Like, I think, yeah, like I was talking to some of my buddies in comics, and it's just like so many times. And this is one of the good things and bad things about social media, right? Like the good thing is
Mhm.
you get to connect with people, especially marginalized people, people of color, LGBTQ folks
Mhm.
who don't always have access to people they can relate to. And that's
Right.
great. And the bad thing sometimes being like every little thing gets amplified to this degree where it's
Mhm.
like, I really wish people would just, I'm not gonna say too much about it, but it's just the Snyder stuff over the past week has really kind of yeah, it's like there's a reason I took Twitter off my phone, and like I really have to stop checking it on my desktop as well.
Yeah, it's kind of hard sometimes, especially again, like that's, I'm glad you kind of brought all this stuff up because you're 100% right, and again, like you're in the industry. You're not just like some dude with an app on his phone, like you know what you're talking about. You have a long history in the comics business. And listen, I agree with you. I agree with you. Like there's tons of weird stuff out there that I feel like 20 years from now, we're gonna get the scientific developments of syndromes like that Twitter has caused, that comic book Twitter specifically has caused in people. So what are you collecting now? Like, are you still an avid reader? Do you curate your stuff, or is it just like, I know we're both big toy guys.
Oh, in terms of collecting, it's pretty much all toys now.
Yeah.
It's not that I dislike comics, obviously, but
Mm,
there's just so much good stuff in comics that like I know I'm gonna sound like a traitor to the industry, but I do sometimes wait for the trade paperback just because,
mm,
especially with the pandemic, it's not as easy to head into a comic shop and
yeah.
just I'm trying. My wife is a nurse, and like I'm trying to limit as much indoor activity as I can, even
Mhm.
with the mask and social distancing.
Yeah, absolutely.
But hot toys are beautiful, and I don't know if I'll be able to stop buying some of them. Like my Hot Toys 40th anniversary Boba Fett just came in,
Oh my
and
god.
it is so gorgeous. And I got the 1/4 Grogu coming up next because they're selling it separately as well, and that's
Yeah.
coming at the end of the year. And Nika's just putting out those beautiful Ninja Turtle toys, and McFarlane's DC toys are amazing right now. Just the articulation is so fucking good, and the sculpting is so good, and they're so
Yeah.
playable. That's the great thing. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, like oh, they're so playable. And like Marvel Legends, those toys are just they're like. Can you imagine if when we were like 10, if we got a Marvel Legends toy? And I love Toy Biz toys, don't get me wrong, but like
Yeah.
these Marvel Legends are amazing, amazing $20 toys. Amazing.
It's like for the price point, I think like the Marvel Legends toys are fascinating and they're awesome and they're really cool. I feel like the Marvel Legends are like the ideal toy that you always wish you had. You know, like you said, like when I was 10 and if I got a Marvel Legend, oh my God, forget it. Like that. Cause we grew up during that time where it was like this stuff kind of just started getting off the ground. Like I remember having like superpowers figures when I
Yeah.
was a kid, like a couple, and it was like, they were fun and they were great, but you click Superman's legs together and his arms did this thing. And that was pretty much it until you had the Toy Biz figures. And now it's like every character is pretty much getting an awesome figure, which is really cool, but it takes up a lot of space.
Yeah.
The McFarlane stuff, I think they're for the price point for $20, like they just look friggin' badass, don't they?
Yeah, they're pretty metal. Like they're in the detailing on a $20 toy. I don't think I've ever like that combined with playability too. Like, I'm sure you've collected older Nika stuff. Am I
Yes, yeah.
pronouncing it right? Nika?
I always thought it was NECA, but Nika
Nika?
works too. Whatever.
Like the sculpting on it is always nice, but like they're not playable. The plastic
No.
is really hard. It breaks. I think almost all of my Nika toys have broken at one point or another. And so I've learned if they come and they're packaged, don't open them.
Yeah.
They are unfortunately the don't open toys, but they look
Yeah.
beautiful.
No, they look great. And like those are not like you said, they're cool. They're really cool to look at. And that was kind of what I was worried about with the McFarlane toys, where like, oh, these are great to look at, but could I mess around with them and like do all this stuff, And I have to limit myself because obviously with like all that stuff, I want to get every one of them, but I'm like, you know what? I'll just get this one and that one and maybe this one, But
Right.
and that's why I have my brother. My brother will text me like, he orders like every set that comes out, and I'm
Right.
like, yo, you got to send me pictures. This is great. I thought of you the other day. I went to the comic store and they had the Sideshow Wolverine, the new one.
Oh, the yellow
Yeah,
one.
yeah.
Right.
I got to send you a picture of that. I feel like I need to have you come on again when the Dragon Path comes out,
Sure.
and you could talk to me about that, and then we can talk further about the toy collecting because I feel like we could do this for hours.
Yeah, I mean,
Mm.
yeah, we just scraped the surface of how much toy stuff we follow. So
Oh, forget it. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That I find that stuff fascinating now. Like it's like comic books in general, including toys, are going through like this crazy renaissance.
yeah, I mean, I've had this argument with some of like my friends who are a bit older who grew up with like Byrne and Claremont
Mm.
and Bronze Age stuff, and like they
Yeah.
stopped collecting during the Copper and Modern Age. And to them, it's like, well, no one's ever going to be better than who I grew up with, and that's fine.
Right.
That's fine if that's your favorite.
Mm.
But like, I'm sorry, the average person working in comics today in the art department,
Mm.
is, as the illustrator, as the artist, is so much more skilled now. Just the average
Right.
one, just because
Right.
like you have to be so much more skilled. You have to learn how to ink yourself now. You have to
Mm.
learn, if anything, to color yourself now. And then on top of that, you have to learn both traditional and digital now. It's almost like I actually rarely see someone who
Mm.
doesn't know both now. And I'm not saying and I'm not saying that should be the bare minimum to even get in the industry. I'm just saying that like the competition is only getting harder and harder just
Right.
because there's so many young talented folks that are coming in now, and for the
Mm.
better. It's also different people, like not just straight white men. So
Right.
it's just
Right.
lots of different people coming in.
It's not knocking these guys, or it's not knocking that style, but like everything, there is an evolution. Like if you pick up any Silver Age book, it's not appalling, but you're gonna be like, wow, these were sensibilities back in the day. Like no backgrounds, everything took place in a green room. Especially if you look at the DC stuff, which I always thought was fascinating. And even the stuff that, like, I know you're a 90s guy, I'm a 90s guy. If you go back and look at those books, like a lot of those books, like the art doesn't hold up, but in a lot of those books, the art does hold up, And I think now going forward, if you look at the industry, it's an embarrassment of riches, like all around.
Yeah, when I was growing up, and then when I was approaching comics as a 20-year-old, I was like, you
Mm.
know what? I'm gonna draw backgrounds. I'm not gonna be one of those artists
Right.
who lapses on background drawing. And nowadays that's not really even an issue because
Mhm.
I rarely do not see as many new artists enter in
Mhm.
who don't at least understand that backgrounds are actually kind of fundamental to sequential art.
Mhm.
But during the 90s, yeah, there were a lot of bad habits that were kind of like percolating in the industry just
Yeah.
because for the rumors that I heard was that artists were just encouraged to draw more splash pages because they sold better, which obviously they look better on your
Right.
wall.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, a lot of the folks I'm seeing now is just the sequential skills are really, really strong, especially for their young age. So I mean, it's
Yeah.
just
Yeah, it's pretty gnarly too, man. When you look at some stuff out there and you're like, whoa, this guy came out of nowhere, this person came out of nowhere, you know.
yeah, yeah.
I do think an evolution would be like guys like yourself and Chris Samney who kind of employ more of like a cartoonist sensibility. You know, like the sense of movement, I feel like is something that still needs to be worked on across the board. I don't know if you
Oh
feel
yeah,
that
I
way.
mean, there's who's that guy? Daniel Warren Johnson.
Oh,
He's
that
pretty
guy, yeah.
yeah, he's
Yeah.
pretty amazing at that stuff. Yeah. Um, Yeah, it's always nice to be compared to Sammy. He's one of my favorites now.
Mhm.
I bug him sometimes on social media to kind of like for it to bend his ear a little bit because
Mhm.
I admire his work for so long. Yeah, I that was flattering for you to say, and yeah, I mean I think I love the cartoony animated style because that's what
Mhm.
I grew up with. I've noticed some people don't. I don't know. I don't really know how to gauge sometimes what
Mhm.
readers really want because I did I did a Firefly story
Mhm.
about a graphic novel about Watch How I Soar,
Okay.
and I have this bad habit of constantly checking reviews to see if I get name checked. And I found one review that were pretty positive, one review that was positive, and then another review that called the art basic. And I think I went through 10 minutes of like this indignant, like fuck you, what are you fucking kind of thing on my
Uh,
couch. Um, but yes, I think it's just personal taste, obviously,
mhm.
and I don't know how my more cartoony style can come across to some people. So we'll see. Um, the Dragon Path is for 8 to 12-year-olds. I think everyone will enjoy it, just
Mhm.
regardless of age range. Um, but I do think that people who like that more cartoony style will hopefully gravitate towards my book.
Ethan Young, what is the best sandwich you ever had in your life?
Oh man. So there's two. So there's before I became vegan and after I became vegan. So
Oh, okay.
before I became vegan, it was like bacon, egg, and cheese right outside Columbus Circle. The one
Ooh,
was, you know the ones I'm talking about on the Kaiser
absolutely.
roll.
Yeah, yeah.
Then after I became vegan, there's this little cafe called Land Cafe that was on 6th and First Avenue. It was Vietnamese, and they made a vegan banh mi with this really, really tender seitan, which is like wheat gluten,
Mhm.
and it was a very simple sandwich. And I fell in love with this sandwich, and we always and like I whenever like yeah I went through my phase of being this incredibly also like preachy vegan person, but
Uh-huh.
afterwards I was just kind of like what, try this sandwich. If you don't like it, I'll never bring you to a vegetarian vegan place again.
Mhm.
And everyone I brought there who wasn't vegan or vegetarian fucking loved this sandwich. It was just simple.
Mhm.
Like it was one of those restaurants that was just family run. They used a shower curtain as like the door as the curtain for the door,
Oh,
and it
wow.
was a small place. You could kind of hear them yelling at each other from the kitchen because it was like 5-6 feet away. But like the food, if you ordered the right dishes,
Mhm.
it was just absolutely sublime. So Land Cafe that was on 6th and First, I missed that place. But yeah, just before I stopped eating meat, it was just God, like New York City cart food was just I loved hot dogs with everything on it. I loved getting a bagel with cream cheese right in the morning. I mean, I can still get that thankfully because there's non-dairy cream cheese, but like that's whenever I go down to New York City, it's like I am gonna eat so many goddamn bagels here
Oh,
because
yeah.
state bagels are, no offense, they're kind of garbage.
Yeah, it's tough when you're out of the city. Like I have friends and family that whenever they come to town, they'll take bagels home with them from either Queens or the city, just because they're so damn good. We
They're so
almost
good, they're so
yeah.
fluffy. Oh, and you got the cream cheese on it's like this thick,
Oh,
and then
yeah,
this
yeah.
the bagels like this.
You can make 3 other sandwiches with the amount of cream cheese on a New York bagel.
Yeah, I know. It's just
Next
I can never give up carbs. I think every time I go through that like stage in my now like I'm nearing towards, I guess, middle age now. I guess 38. So middle age is like 40, right? I
I guess
guess.
so.
Yeah.
45 now. I mean, like
Yeah.
40 is the new 20. I'm only saying that
Yeah.
because I'm going to be 40 in a couple of months.
Okay. But you still look good. But
Thanks, bud.
yeah. Every time I'm like, oh, I should go on a diet or something, and I'm
Mm,
like, no, I'm not going to give up carbs. I'm sorry. And then if I, before the pandemic, I visit the
mm.
city. It's like I'm definitely not giving up carbs now because
Yeah,
I just
yeah.
had 6 bagels.
Yeah, it's tough, man. Well, next time you're in town, if you haven't already, check out the cinnamon snail if you're still doing the vegan thing. I don't know if you've had any of their fare, but
I have. I think the Pensy closed though, right?
I'm not 100% sure. I think they may have because just the way it was structured, it's very unsafe during this time.
No, I think yeah, it was weird. Like I know the Pensy opened and there were one
Mm,
of the kiosks there, or not kiosks, but like food courts there, and
yeah.
yeah, I was hearing that they had closed, but I remember when they had the food truck, I made a stop to their food truck every single
Mhm.
time and got some donuts and some sandwiches, and yeah, they were pretty good.
Yeah, those black bean burgers I find like unruly. Like I dig them, you know. Like I'm not vegan, but I do enjoy vegan fare on
Right.
occasion, you know. All right, and also to quickly jump back to the comic book stuff, you opened your commissions recently.
I did, yeah. I just finished Dragon Path, and I have like a couple of projects that are kind of still in the contract negotiation stage.
Mhm.
For anyone listening to this, if you're an aspiring cartoonist or you're aspiring to get, or you're, into the wider book publishing field, a lot of time is going to be spent on just back and forth about the contract. So be prepared for that. So within that time, I was like, you know what, I'm finally going to do commissions because some people have asked about them. And then so I was like, you know what, I should probably offer them and stop being such a tool about it and just offer commissions.
How's it working out for you so far, man? Like the stuff you're putting out is pretty fantastic.
Oh, thank you. It's working. It's going slow at right now, but still steady. I've got a few that I'm going to work on over the next couple of weeks, and yeah, I didn't put a limit on it, and I'm leaving it open until the end of March. So, I think some people probably don't feel the urge to get it right away, but I had a new one coming yesterday, so I'm going to be working on probably two or three over the next 2 weeks.
Have you gotten any crazy requests?
No, thankfully, no. In the past, I have. I don't know. Oh my god! I remember I did Asbury Park once, and
Mm,
this is one of the reasons I like stopped offering commissions because before I did Nanjing the Burning City and stuff, I couldn't really charge that much just because sometimes price is determined by clout. I mean, let's face it, it's not
sure.
always determined by talent.
Mm,
And so I was like, yeah, I don't really have the clout to charge more than, let's say, 40 or $60.
mhm.
And then, yeah, at Asbury Park, I got this incredibly awkward commission request from someone who was really sweaty and nervous in front of my table,
Ooh. Uh-huh.
and then asked for something that was very sexual, involving an adult version of a character from uh, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory.
Ooh, that's bizarre.
That's bizarre, and also it kind of crosses that line that I don't like to cross.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
it was awkward because the situation was happening right in front of me in real time.
Yeah.
And this guy, I don't know if he would have turned violent or not. He was like
Oh my
kind of
god.
shaky. And
Yeah.
I was just like, you know what? Maybe I should draw it for him really quickly and then get him the fuck out of here.
Yeah,
And then
yeah.
I Googled what this actress looked like, and I had no idea she was actually like young.
Oh
Uh,
no.
and then I kind of told him like, no, I can't do this. She's a kid. And he's
Mm,
like, oh, I just want an adult version. I'm like, no, no, I can't do this, man. She's a child.
mm.
And I kind of, I don't feel good about this, but I pointed him towards someone else, like, go ask him.
Oh boy.
So
That
some other
guy'll
support
do it.
staff had to draw it.
That guy down there will do it. How about I draw you a sexy Professor X? That's what you should have said.
Yes, yes. I kind of wish it was just that. Like,
Mm.
I'm not trying to kink shame anyone, but there's a certain line I'm not going to cross. And so, yeah, it's just kind of, so
I think that's a pretty good line though. You know,
yeah, to not
just
cross. Yeah.
like I think for anybody approaching you about a commission, like, listen, don't get too weird is a good, like that's a good signpost to put up there. All right,
Yeah.
Ethan, thank you so much for doing this. Where could everybody find you? Talk to us. Tell us what your deal is.
Well, you can find me on Instagram and Twitter at Popmyth, Popmyth. There might be an underscore between Pop and Myth on Twitter. I forget now. I just log on and it's there. Or you can find my work at youngillustrations.com, and it's spelled the way it sounds.
Awesome, man. Listen, I really appreciate you coming on. I hope you come on again after Dragon Path comes out and you sell 1 million copies.
I hope so too. Thank you.
Cool, man. I'll talk to you
later.
Thanks, Ethan. Listen, I appreciate you coming on, and I love chatting with you. Listen, I'll give people behind the scenes a little bit. After we got done with the interview and I stopped recording, we ended up chatting for another hour just about comics, action figures, life in general. Really cool guy. Check out his stuff. We're going to leave some links down in the YouTube description. Follow us both on Twitter. I'm at BTC Rich. You can find Ethan at Pop_Myth on Twitter. You can find this show on BTC Rich X on YouTube. We're going to be posting it soon to the gfqnetwork.com website, where I do another podcast called Mad Men. Which you guys seem to like, which is cool. I like it too. And we're also going to have the rollout of the iTunes version of these shows very soon. I think in another couple of episodes, you're going to be able to find us on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, wherever you find, buy, purchase, and kiss your podcasts. All right, guys, it's been a fun week. I got to paint my house, and I'll talk to you guys next week with another guest. Love you. LL, baby. Later.